You're listening to European Startup Universe Talks, a podcast where we meet with startup founders, angel investors, and major stakeholders of the European startup ecosystem. They let us in on the do's and don'ts of running a startup, their career story, and the process of succeeding as well as failing. In other words, everything of interest to startup nerds. European Startup Universe is a massive network of opportunities for EU tech startup founders, connecting them with the best minds of the EU tech community, with unicorn founders, known investors, and experts. We have brought together European countries to join forces and launch startup programs suitable for their nation's tech founders. ESU aims to give access to opportunity for funding and expansion across EU countries. Welcome to European Startup Universe Talks. I'm Maritza, and today I am here with Vasja Veber, the co-founder of Viberate. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, could you just begin by telling me about Viberate?
So yeah, we're a music analytics service. Usually when I have to explain real quickly, I say that we're doing for music what IMDb is doing for the movies. So basically we're standardizing the industry, we're gather information of all the music stakeholders in one platform, and then we measure their popularity by using data from streaming services, social media, ticket vendors, music stores, even radio airplay. So currently we analyze popularity for almost every musician in the world. So we have a little over 520,000 unique artist profiles, musician profiles in our database. So those are anyone from huge superstars like Ed Sheeran to a local DJ that you never heard of. So everybody gets their own profile on Viberate, and then we plug into their official channels, even unofficial ones, and then we analyze how consumers listen to their music across different channels, how people on TikTok are using their content, how their audience is growing, if they're fading out, if they're trending. So it's a tool that music professionals use to discover interesting talent, up and coming musicians, to see who's hot in which area. Promoters or festivals look for who to book on their next festival or event. Label A&Rs use it to discover new interesting music and sign new talent. So it's a very useful tool for anyone who's working in music professionally.
Because you were active in the music industry, or you were a manager?
Yeah, so my background is actually music management. I was managing one of the biggest techno DJs in the world, Umek, for over 12 years. He's also one of the co-founders of the company, and that's also one of the reasons that we founded the company, because we needed a tool to measure his popularity and to see how different factors influence his popularity. So when we were shoveling money into Facebook advertising 10 years ago or 8 years ago, we couldn't really find out if this is good for his career or not. So if popularity is going up because we're advertising, or if it doesn't do anything. Also, when we organized a tour or had a new release out, we wanted a tool to measure the effects of those factors onto his popularity. And because we couldn't find any such tool, we simply built one. But then it's turned out that everybody needs it. So we kind of left our old business behind, and we fully focused on Viberate. And now we have 50 people working for us here in Ljubljana, Slovenia. Plus we have additional 120 people across the world. It's a pretty large team, and it became a real business.
It has expanded pretty fast over the years.
Yeah, so we actually first started, we raised a round of, I think it was 400,000 euros, which gave us enough money to build the initial team, to build an MVP, and basically to start working. And then after we raised our biggest round, which was $10.7 million, we needed to expand really quickly. So we moved to bigger offices, and it only took us 2 months to go from 100 square meters to 1,000 square meters office space, and we rented a completely empty 1,000 square meter office space here in Ljubljana. It was one big hall, and it took us only 2 months to build everything. So walls, offices, equipment, everything. It was done so fast. So it's a startup world. You have to move fast. If you don't move fast, you're gonna get left behind.
Yeah, no, for sure. How was that change in that like short amount of time? Was that a shock, or was it just exciting? How was it?
It was both, but it was. I mean, it's a pleasant memory. So in the startup world, you have both. So you have pleasant memories and you have really unpleasant ones, because every startup, even large companies like Apple or Tesla or Facebook, they have unpleasant memories when they were struggling. They couldn't, they weren't sure if they're gonna make it through another month. But there are pleasant memories of this one. So it's usually it's when you raise a significant amount of money, which then takes a lot of burden off your chest, because at the beginning you're only thinking if you're gonna make salaries next month, if you'll be able to continue with your product. And when you get enough funding, this actually becomes irrelevant, because now you can fully focus on your project. You can fully focus on hiring the best people you can hire, and just evolving the service as planned. And this is something that every founder wants. So this is the good part. This is the exciting part. So it was not such a it was a positive shock, but it was really exciting.
I can imagine. How was the process of getting that funding? How did you go about it?
So yeah, that was also an interesting story. I usually like to share it, especially when I'm talking with potential new investors, because they really like the story. So as I said, we first raised our angel round here in Slovenia. We got it from a couple of angel investors and a local accelerator. With that money, we built our first version of Viberate, which was maybe 1% of what we have now. So it was really, really early. And then the accelerator asked us to move to their Silicon Valley offices. They opened up their offices in Silicon Valley, and they said, okay, you'll be one of our first startups over there. And because you have a great product, you're definitely gonna raise money from Silicon Valley investors, which is a goal for every startup founder. And then so we packed our bags. Actually, my wife and I moved to San Jose for 4 months, trying to raise money, but we were there without any network. We didn't know anyone. No one was picking up our calls or returning emails, and we were way too early to do anything there. So it was a mistake in that way. But on the other hand, it forced us to improvise, to do something. So what we did was, because no one was answering our emails, we put together a list. We went to Crunchbase. We put together a list of all the investors from the Valley who invested in music-related businesses, in music startups. It was about 70 VCs, and we looked them up on Google Maps. We rented a car, and we just went there. So we went door to door, just crashing offices unannounced, because no one would take our meeting. And we just said, okay, if you're not gonna answer our emails, we'll just come to you. And at the beginning, it was super awkward. So we were sure that they're gonna kick us out, and it's gonna be super weird, which in some cases was the case. Sometimes it was weird, but in most cases, I would say 90% cases, it went from initially being weird to being really well accepted, because investors want to work with startups who can prove that they can hustle. So it's slightly out of the comfort zone, just going to someone's offices and saying, okay, we didn't deliver food, but we came to a meeting unannounced. And one of the VCs were so thrilled that he said to his secretary, okay, cancel all my meetings for the next 2 hours. I want to sit down with those guys. And we went to his conference room, and he said, so first of all, our focus switched from entertainment to health tech. So we're not the right match for you, but because I really like you guys and the way that you approached everything, I'm going to help you out with intros. And so we were sitting in his conference room. He had his laptop open and he was just going through the whole Rolodex of VCs saying, okay, I know that this fund was investing in this music company. I'll do an intro. And he did a bunch of intros for us. So that way we got a lot of actual meetings. But at the end, we still didn't raise the round because we were way too early. But now we have a nice network of investors who are just waiting for us to give them a call for when we need our next round. So that was, in that way, it was successful. So yeah, and then we went back to Ljubljana, Slovenia without having any money. Just a nice experience and some knowledge, but that doesn't pay salaries. So yeah, and our angel investors bailed us out. So he just said, okay, we had a meeting. We said, okay, well, we failed. We didn't raise any money. We only have enough money for the next 2 weeks. I'm sorry that we failed you. We'll let you down. It is what it is. I mean, you know the risk. And he said, how much money do you need? And we didn't prepare for that. So we just said, well, 400,000 euros. And he said, well, okay, you're gonna have it in the next weeks. It was that simple. So he often now says that when you guys didn't even believe in yourself, I was the one who believed in you, and it was the right decision to do. And I still believe in you. Another interesting thing about him is that he doesn't work in music. It's not his focus. He's a nuclear physicist, so it couldn't be further away from music than he is. But he's a really famous local entrepreneur, really a smart guy with a PhD in nuclear physics. So it's always a lot of fun meeting him, listening about his projects that are totally unrelated to what we have. But I mean, it's always nice to surround yourself with smart people. It doesn't matter which field they're smart in. So yeah. Anyway, this was in 2017, and so we were always playing around with an idea of introducing cryptocurrencies into our business model. Because at first we wanted to build a marketplace, much like Airbnb for music. So let's say you have a wedding, you go online, you pick a wedding band or a DJ, you book them through the platform, and they come and they play for you. So that was the initial idea that got completely decimated by the pandemic later on. But at that time, that was enough for us to raise a significant amount of money through crypto offerings. So we created our own token, and we used the round was sold out. It was a crowdfunding round in ICO. It was sold out in under 5 minutes, 10.7 million. And then we used the token to reward people who are helping us build a platform. So that's another story. So the platform Viberate is crowdsourced. So like I said before, we have over 500,000 musician profiles, and those are profiles that were added by music fans or artists themselves. So anyone could add new profiles. If you're a musician, or if you know a musician who's not in a database, you can log into Viberate and you can add the musician in the database, and then we're going to start measuring their performance. And back then, if you did this, you earned our tokens. It was actually real money. So you can then sell those tokens for Bitcoin or even for dollars, and you could buy yourself something. So people started to become basically professional Viberate database curators. So people they woke up in the morning and they started adding musicians in our database because they know that with each profile that they added, they were earning money. And we were insanely popular in Venezuela because they have a really sad and tough economic situations there, really low salaries, and people realize that if they learn about music, if they start studying it, and by that adding profiles into Viberate, they're going to make much more money than they do in their real daytime job. And so this is how we also scaled. So we raised a significant round, plus we managed to scale really fast. So it's a pretty long story.
It's a very interesting story, and it's incredibly innovative. It's
it's one of the things of being a startup founder. You have to know your way out of basically hopeless situations. Raising money really early stage is one of the hardest thing a startup founder can do, unless you discover cure for cancer and then everybody's going to give you money, or if you're Elon Musk, then you have such a huge respect within the investment community that they're going to give you money without asking what you need it for. But otherwise, I usually say that you're bound to fail. So anyone who really makes it here is an exception. Usually the rule is that most of the startups will fail. And sometimes really good ideas and really good teams will fail because they fail to raise money, which is pretty sad. But yeah, you have to be innovative. And it sounds like a cliche, but it's really one of the most true sayings in a startup community, that you just don't give up. So sometimes you're gonna get like a magical solution really last minute. Like I said, we had enough money for 2 weeks of operation, plus a final trip to someone just to get drunk and to cry on each other's shoulder. That was it. That was the budget, and we kind of made it. So just don't give up. If you think that you have the idea, if you truly believe in yourself, just keep trying, even if you fail.
Yeah, it's really, I feel like your story is really, really that example of that.
Yeah, but we were lucky enough that we actually made it. Sometimes you're just gonna keep trying, and sooner or later you're gonna give up. And sometimes maybe it is good to give up and just try it slightly differently, or just don't be. I didn't want it to sound that you have to be stubborn. You don't be stubborn, but just keep looking for alternative routes to get you there.
Yeah, absolutely. But would you say that were you surprised that you ended up being a startup founder? Was that something that felt natural, or was it more of a surprise that you went in that direction?
Well, I wouldn't say it was a surprise, because we were, before that, I mean, we founded companies together with my co-founders. We had a music management agency, a record label, a marketing agency. One of the best regional event marketing agencies in the whole Balkans region. So those, I wouldn't say they were typical startups, because we didn't get any funding. Everything was bootstrapped, but there were companies that we founded. So we were founders. We never worked for someone else. And we started exploring the startup scene pretty early on. It's not something that was common in Slovenia and our part of Europe. It's a relatively young thing, startups. Everybody's now is talking about startups, and everyone wants to be a startup funder. But 12 years ago, it was a Silicon Valley thing. So there were some startups in London, and everyone knew about startups in Silicon Valley, but it wasn't the thing here. It's pretty traditional. So there were no funds, no investors. But then the globalization also came here, and it became a thing. So now we have local, national, regional funds. We have investors investing directly in Slovenian companies. We have some government support. I wish we had more, and it's kind of evolving. So, but when we started, I was reading TechCrunch every day. I just had it open, and I knew for every round that was raised in Silicon Valley, it was a thing that we were really passionate about the whole scene. So, and that's why we were so early on and so rushing to go into Silicon Valley. It was way too early, but it was like a dream coming true. So we started living the life that we were only reading about a couple of years ago.
Oh, I can imagine that being a very, very exciting experience. The thing that you
and also very disappointing when we realized that we didn't achieve our goal.
Yeah, well, for sure. How would you say that the music industry is constantly evolving, and especially maybe over the last years that it has changed a lot? How would you say is the future of the music industry?
So yeah, I think that it's really evolving really fast, and that was one of the reasons that we started this company, because it was evolving so fast that you couldn't see the forest for the trees. So back in the 80s, there were not a lot of musicians because the entry barrier was too high. So you actually had to learn to play an instrument, or if you wanted to be a DJ, you had to go to a record store and to buy physical vinyls. And now every kid with a Mac can be a DJ. They just download a bunch of tracks or just plug into a streaming service, download a program and start mixing. So it's basically no entry barriers at all. And you can learn to play guitar watching YouTube videos. Back in the 80s, you had to actually go to an instructor or a music school to learn how to play an instrument. So it's much easier to become a musician, and that's why we have a lot of musicians, and streaming services add up to 60,000 new songs every day. So it's a hyper production, and because of that, it's becoming increasingly harder to discover new music, new interesting music. A lot of it is just gonna go by. So you're never gonna discover what you could potentially like. It's becoming increasingly hard for professionals to discover rising talent, because there's so many to select from. So again, maybe a new Justin Bieber just wanted to pitch you a song and you didn't listen because you were so overwhelmed with the whole volume of what you were getting if you're working for a label. So yeah, it's evolving really fast, and that's why it's so important for services like Viberate to exist, because we're trying to tame that huge amount of data and process it, and then offer you information in a readable and easily understandable way for you as a music professional to use it to discover new talent, and to make sure that you're not going to miss on the next Justin Bieber or Taylor Swift. So we think that it's going towards being a data-oriented industry, and also proof for that is that we're all of a sudden getting attention of some of the largest companies in advertising and tech space. They're all interested in what we're doing and what kind of data services that we can provide. And yeah, so I think that it's going to be the data in the music industry, analytics, statistics, is going to be a talk of the town for the next couple of years.
Absolutely, and it's when you think about it, it's kind of surprising that it hasn't it hasn't been a thing earlier. Because when you think about it, it's obvious that this is a great idea that is also very, very needed, both for artists, but also for the managers and the bookers and everything.
Yeah, it's a hard nut to crack. So it's I'm lucky enough that my co-founder is a passionate mathematician, and he's all about statistics and Excel spreadsheets, and I hate all that. So I usually joke that I was back in when I was studying economics, I hated statistics. So I barely passed the 3 exams I had to pass in my way to graduation. And I said, I'll never work with that crap again. And now I basically own a statistics company. So yeah, for him, this is a challenge, and it's something that he likes to do. So he came up with all our ranking algorithms, all the underlying tech that defines how artists are ranked and rated on Viberate. This is basically all his idea, and it requires a lot of brain power, and it's really hard to do it. And that was one of the reasons that no one did it. I mean, no one did it. There are a couple of companies that are doing this, but right now we're the only one who is doing this slightly differently. So we use a combination of machine learning and AI with a lot of HI, human intelligence, not artificial intelligence. So we do a lot of things manually. That's why we have so many people employed, because machines won't do the job for you. You have to have a human touch, especially when working in something that's so subjective as music. So it's an emotional thing, and machines don't have emotions. So you have to have a human listening to music to do any kind of like matching tracks from different channels, or cleaning up databases of artists. And every channel has different IDs for artists and stuff like that. So it's a huge data mess there that requires a combination of machines and humans, and that's a huge entry barrier. So you cannot just have an idea and say, okay, I'll do that. So you need a lot of funding, a lot of knowledge. You have to fail a lot of times, and yeah, like I said, the last thing you need to do is give up. So
you have learned that one, you should never give up, but what are other things that you would say as a startup founder that you would like to share with people who are in the early stages of their startup? What are some advice you have?
Yeah, so first advice would be that, I mean, it's a thing in startups, you have to start early. We were pretty late to the party. So when we joined the local accelerator, we were in our late 30s, some of us even in the 40s, and most of the other startup founders in the accelerator thought that we were mentors and investors coming in, because we were the next generation, the old generation. So we kind of didn't really fit in. We still made it, because like I said, we were founders since the very beginning, having founded other companies. So it's important to start very early on, even if it's a small local thing, just a company that you start, like, I don't know, you sell computer equipment or have a cleaning service or whatever. Just, you have to start nurturing your entrepreneurial spirit. If you're lucky enough, you're going to live in a country that's going to support you with it, it's going to give you some initial funding, or maybe if you study business, so your school is going to have a program that's going to encourage you to start your own thing. That's always a good thing. But don't wait too long, because now I just turned 40. My co-founder is 45, so we all have kids. That makes it increasingly hard then to dedicate enough time, to split enough time between business and family. And both are important. Family is even more important than business, but you have the obligation towards your investors, your employees, and towards yourself. So it becomes increasingly hard the older that you get, and that's why it's so important to start early.
Oh, absolutely. Do you have any tips to maintain a good work and free time balance?
Well, you have to have your priorities in set up in place. So I usually work, I'm a goal-oriented person. So what I do is I set goals, and then I find a way to achieve those goals. And the older you get, the more experience you get, the better you get in setting those goals. So you have to set your goals optimistically, but still in a way that you achieve them. If you're gonna set them unrealistically, then that balance it's not gonna work for you. So you're gonna work long hours, and then you're gonna have problems because you don't spend much time with your family, don't sleep enough, and that's then gonna backfire with your work. So it's not, I mean, everyone has got their own formulas. Some people do yoga, some people run after work, some people just go and watch TV and rest. You have to figure out what's best for you. There's no universal formula. The only thing that I would say is just don't work yourself to death. So you have to invest time into rest, into plugging out, although it is hard to completely plug out, but you have to force yourself to do it, because it's gonna return with interest. It's one of the best investments you can do for your business, is to really know when to plug out and when it's time to rest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of being productive is also not being productive at times.
Yeah, I mean, that's easier said than done if you're a startup founder, because you're passionate about what you're building, and it's also fun for you. So it's sometimes, I mean, if I had a really interesting conversation with one of the biggest tech companies in the world yesterday at 9 in the evening, which was supposed to be my time with the family and watching movies, but it was so exciting that I actually enjoyed it. It was basically resting time for me because it was fun. It was like hanging out with friends because I got really excited.
Well, for sure, that is the goal, maybe to have a job that you enjoy so much that it doesn't really feel like work in that sense. But what would you say are the future plans for Viberate?
So the vision since the very beginning has always been to standardize the music industry. We say that the simple goal would be, we'll be happy if the goal would be that being a musician without a Viberate account would be like being a guitar player without a guitar. There's going to be something that every music professional will have to use, will have to have. Otherwise, you're just not going to be taken seriously, but by your peers. And so that's the final goal. But as for every startup, the exit strategy is probably being acquired by a big tech company, and then hopefully continuing to develop our service.
And that sounds like a very good plan, and I like the saying, being a musician without the instruments. Yeah, well, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You've been listening to European Startup Universe Talks. If you want to know more about us, go to thestartupuniverse.org and follow us on social media.